Welcome to the session. This session is called Enabling 2D Designers to Push the Boundaries of Creativity. And just before I get started, as you probably can hear, I'm a foreigner. I speak English as my second language, so I will probably have some accent. And if you can kindly raise your hand if you don't understand me, I will try to repeat it really slow. So thank you again for your understanding. Also, another thing is that this session has an assumption that you are more familiar with 3D or 2D than 3D. So I was trying to curate this session more catered to graphic designers. So I hope that you are the right audience. And also, I have some sticker on my slides that says must know. So this is the session that you really need to know to use our app. But I also have some parts that says super pro tips. So if you think it's a little bit overwhelming, it's totally okay not to understand that part. You wouldn't have any problem using our app still. Okay, so let's get started. Hi, my name is Erin Kim, and I'm a senior product designer with Adobe Dimension team. And if you haven't heard of Adobe Dimension at all, it's a 3D visualization tool for people who might not be 3D experts. And when I tell you I design how the 3D software should work, you might actually think I'm the guru and expert of 3D and I know everything about 3D. But that is so not true. I actually was trained as graphic designer, and I used to practice at branding agencies or package agency, sometimes editorial, and sometimes advertisement. So in other words, I was a very hardcore graphic designer. And whenever I hear the word of 3D, I kind of got very intimidated or almost scared. And the concept of VR, AR, or 3D was really foreign to me. In fact, whenever I hear those words, this is what I would think of. Does anyone know what this is? This is the very first head-mounted display that was ever invented. And it was called Sword of Damocles. Does anyone know what Sword of Damocles is? No? Okay, so it is originated from this myth. It is referring to this sword that is hanging on top of the servant's head, hung by the king to teach the servant the lesson of the burden and threat the king has to bear. It is such a daunting name for a headset, a sword. And there was a reason why it was named after a sword. It was because the device was so heavy that no human head can bear its weight. And of course, that's not the case with the headset that's out there anymore, so good for us. So why was this invented in the beginning? It was not because they wanted to play Pokemon Go or some VR game. It was because there was a problem that they wanted to solve. The problem was this. It was really hard for helicopter pilots to land at night. So they wanted to somehow sync the low-light camera movement with their head movement so that they really don't have to danger their landing at night. And this type of problem is something that you actually go through. And you can see that the essence of this technology of 3D, AR, or VR is to help us visualize a situation without physically making it happen. And that's something that graphic designers actually go through every day. And let me tell you some example. So here is an amazing American fashion brand, Fossil, and I'm pretty sure that you are all aware of their amazing watches that comes with these tin can boxes. Well, this tin can box is so iconic and important to Fossil that when you actually walk into the store, the entire wall will be decorated with histories of tin can box. But this wasn't the easiest thing for them to design. So here was what the process was like. They actually designed an Adobe Illustrator, and then they had to print it out on the paper, and they folded it so that whenever the reviewer was ready to review, they had to hold it in hand and then try to look at it from all different angles. But not only this is really time-taking or time-consuming and painstaking, but also this is not giving you accurate representation of how your graphic will look like on the metal tin can. So when they were introduced to Dimension, they were very excited about this idea of being able to look at their graphic from all around the angle immediately. And also you can preview how your graphic will look like under different light conditions. And more importantly, they were so happy about this idea of being able to spend more time on actually designing the tin can rather than wasting their time on printing and cutting for something that doesn't even look accurate. So you kind of get why 3D now. Yeah, 3D can be a little bit more helpful for graphic designers, but why Dimension? Why not other software that's out there? And I'm going to answer that with my own frustration and with my own journey. So a few years ago, when I was at advertising agency, I had to go through a lot of mock-ups with fake Photoshop shadow and fake lighting, and then I figured it was not really efficient. So I kind of wanted to make the jump to 3D. So I attempted to model something in an app that's out there, and here is what I ended up having. And I actually spent weeks of training to even mock this up, but it's looking really gray, and in fact, it's so kind of embarrassing to even look at it. So after weeks of training and effort, I just decided not to do it anymore, and I gave up. But a few years after that, I eventually joined Adobe, and I heard that there was this team called Adobe Dimension, whose mission was to bring 3D experience more approachable and accessible to everyone, and I decided to join the team. And after that, I started to realize what I was doing wrong, and soon I was able to make the jump to left to right. And that's what I wanted to teach you today. And also, I was able to create all of these instantaneously, and all of these too. And it seems like I'm not the only person who was finally able to make the jump from 2D to 3D. These are all the quotes from our exciting users, and whenever we hear these responses from our designers, we really feel encouraged and motivated to bring the experience closer to you. Okay, so let's really get started to our app. So there are some concepts that you need to understand in 3D that might be different from 2D. So this has the must-know sticker. And these are some concepts, and I'm going to walk through one by one. So the first one is model. Model is something really easy to understand. It's basically like an object that's like this laptop or this screen or speaker, mic. It will sometimes have the appearance already defined with it, or it might not have any appearance, thus it will appear just like this white clay. What defines the appearance of the model or object is called material. That's what's making this backdrop from white to pink, or the top balloon thing from white to glass. Light is something that people really neglect a lot, but without light, you wouldn't be able to see anything. Also, it touches everything on your scene. So right now, I have the same exact setup from left to right, but the color looks different. It's not because I set up the color different for this model, but it's because the light has different temperature. And the most important thing you have to understand is camera. So think of it this way. Your scene will be 3D because this is 3D software, and you should be able to navigate your scene or look at your scene from one angle to another, and you are doing that by camera. You are essentially moving your camera from one position to another to look at your scene from different angles. Okay, so let's jump into the app. Here's what the app looks like, and I know it's a little bit overwhelming at first glimpse, so I'm going to break it down for you. On the left side, there is toolbar, just like Illustrator and Photoshop. On the middle, there will be canvas, which is 3D space in this case. On the right side, there will be scene panel. So when I'm creating one document, you're basically setting up a scene with 3D models. And in the scene panel, it will have all the objects that is in the scene, whether it's directly selectable on the canvas or not. And also, there's action panel and properties panel that is contextual, meaning that whatever you have as selection from scene panel or from canvas, it will show relevant actions and properties. So when you first create your document, you will see something like this. Then your first question will be, what am I supposed to place here? And the answer is model, the object. And in Dimension, we have a lot of starter assets that is shipped with our app so that you can actually get started right away. And you can see that this is all the long list that you have access to. And on the left side, there is some package and branding related thing. And on the right side, there is some basic shapes that you can play with. And of course, you want more. So through plus button, you can also access to these amazing galleries from stock. And you can see that there are free collections too, so definitely check it out. Or you can just go directly into the stock, and you see there is dedicated 3D tab. And I actually encourage you to check it out because they have amazing free gallery created for all of you, one of which is this NASA's 60th anniversary 3D celebration. So you can see that all of these amazing assets are free, and this is what our artist was able to mock up in Dimension and render it out using all of those free assets. So definitely check it out. But of course, we sometimes have other 3D people who will give you models, right? Or you might know already how to use Sketchup and try to bring Sketchup file into Dimension. Or you actually might have access to any other places like TurboSquid or somewhere on the web. Then here is all of the list of files that we actually support importing. So don't worry about it. If you don't know any of these formats, I'm going to explain a little bit. So OBJ is something like JPEG in 2D, in 3D. It's like the most basic file format. STL is something for 3D printing. SKP is the SketchUp file. FBX is from Maya. GLB and GLTF files are scene format, meaning that it will not only have just one object, but it will have multiple objects, and it will have the relevant distance preserved. And you can bring them through File menu or just drag and drop or through this plus button. OK, so once I bring object, how am I going to place it so that it becomes a scene like this? Let me show it to you by jumping to our app. OK. I'm setting up so that you can see what I'm seeing. Okay, display, mirror. Okay. Okay, great. So this is what our app looks like, just like I had told you. And here's my canvas. You can easily set up the canvas or document size by just clicking on the boundary. You can see that there is this canvas size, width, and height. And like I told you, your canvas will be 3D space, meaning that it will not only have horizontal and vertical information, but also depth information represented by X and Y and Z. And if you don't know which direction is X and Y and Z, we actually have a little indicator. I'm going to just turn this off so that you can actually see this little widget. You can see that there is X, Y, Z direction. So when you're actually manipulating the object's position, you will be able to do it in all three directions. So let me show you how you can place the model first. I'm going to use just the starter asset because that's conveniently there. I'm going to drag and drop. And you can see that there's a little cyan box that is following my cursor, meaning that it will actually place my object over there. And I can place it. You can see that upon placing it, it automatically switches the tool to select tool. So this is what you use to manipulate your object. And you can see that we not only have a universal tool, select tool, which will actually enable you to move and scale and rotate at the same time, but we also have dedicated tools too that will only give you move or rotate or scale. But for now, I'm going to only use the unified tool because with that, you can do most of the job. I'm going to quickly delete the coffee cup because that doesn't go well with all of my other objects. So I'm going to just go here on the scene panel. I have the coffee cup selected, and I will just go to the action button here. OK, so let me show you how you can move around first. You can see that this select tool has crazy directions and a lot of handles, but don't get intimidated. All you have to remember is just the handle shape. So arrow will give you the move. So if I want to move in this direction, you can see that I'm moving in this direction. Not hard. Or if I want to move sideways, I can just grab this arrow handle, and then I can move like this. Or you can also move by just selecting any empty part of the object, and you can see that now I am moving parallel to my background. But here's the thing, I actually want to place this model onto this cube. And in order for me to do that with this handle, it's going to be like this, because my cube is like on here, and my object is on this level, and it's just penetrating through it. And I don't want that to happen. And there is a simple way of doing that. You can simply grab this little pivot handle, we call it pivot handle, this round thing, and you can see that as I am doing it, it actually moves along the surface. So you can see that I can easily place this tube. And I know that it is on top of my block because the block is highlighted with cyan color. So I can easily do that for this other tube too. I'm dragging. Yes, it's there. I'm going to move it a little bit back over there. And then I'm going to drag it again like this. So easy. Also, let me talk to you about how to rotate the object. So arrow is for move, and rotation is for circle. So you can see that there is this circle handle in all 3 directions because it's 3-dimensional again. And you can see that as I am grabbing and sliding, it is rotating. That's how we are doing rotation. Or you can also rotate in this way. So easy. Okay. Now I have 3 tubes on top of my cube. 3 tubes on top of my cube. And then I'm going to also place this perfume on top of this sphere by again grabbing this pivot handle. So I am going to slide it, and you can see that it is coming along. But here's the thing, this is so tiny, and I don't want the perfume to be so tiny like that. You can control the size of it by just going to this properties panel, and you can see that it gives you real world scene unit, but I'm going to just use this tool again to scale it. And because I want it to be proportionally scaled, I actually had it locked here. It means that it will always proportionally scale. So I'm going to grab square handle this time. So circle for rotation, arrow for move, and square for scale. So I'm going to just scale it, and now it is uniformly scaling, and it's looking good. Okay, here's the thing though. I don't like how my tube is not really aligned to anything, and it's kind of everywhere, and I want to align and distribute evenly, and you can do that. So here I have 3 tubes selected with Shift Select, and you can see that in the action panel, there's alignment and distribution. You can simply click on it, and you can see that, again, you can align and distribute in all these different directions. In this case, I want it to be aligned along here. So to align something, you can just hover on this teardrop handle, and it will give you a cyan plane where your object will be aligned to. So I'm just going to click on it, and you can see that my tubes are now aligned. But it is not evenly distributed, and I want it to be evenly distributed along this axis. So I'm going to just simply click on it. You can see that on the tooltip, it says distribute. So I'm just going to click on it, and now it is evenly distributed. But there is something more fantastic about this tool. Let's say that I actually don't want any distance between the tubes, and I want the distance to be 0. Then you can do that by simply double-click on this. And you can see that my object is now touching each other. But now that I think about it, it's a little bit touching too much, and a little bit suffocating, sorry. And I want to kind of distribute a little bit more evenly and put more space in between the tubes. So I can do that by dragging this align handle like this. So you can always readjust the distance between the object by just playing with these handles. And you might now wonder, how am I supposed to bring all the graphic on the tube, and why is it looking great? And that's what I'm going to talk about now. Okay, so I'm going to switch my mode again. Okay, great. So now that you know how to place model and how to transform it and how to align and distribute, let's talk about the most exciting part, how to define the look of it and why I was able to make the tube in such a color with such graphic. If you've already forgot the term to describe what the appearance of the model is, it is called material. And to edit material, you have to first select material. And you can do that by simply double-click on the object, or you can also hover on the scene panel, on the name of the object, and you can see that there's little arrow, and you can just click on it, and you can see that my status of scene panel has changed, so it's material that is selected now, and I can see the material properties. I can also have the object selected by just clicking back button. I can also just go to action panel and click on this edit material action button. So what can I do with material? First, you are already guru of graphic design. You can just place graphic on top of your model. Let's say that I have a shopping bag here, and I actually want to have this rounded logo on the face of the shopping bag, and I want my shopping bag to have some patterns. In Dimension, this is so easy. So you can simply drag and drop your graphics from desktop or from CC libraries. If you do it in CC libraries, it will always stay in sync. Or you can also copy and paste from Photoshop or Illustrator, and you can edit them back. So I'm going to simply use CC libraries. I can access to CC libraries through this plus button, or you can see that I have access from the drawer. And I am just dragging and dropping the graphic layers. And you can see that it is placed as a layer. I can place as many layers I want. And just like any other layer, you can actually reorder it so that your graphic goes on top. And I can also scale it and move it along the surface of the shopping bag. It's so easy. And I can also change the placement mode so that it actually becomes the fill mode. It's wrapping around the entire shopping bag, and I can also scale the pattern of it. But it's just not the shopping bag with your own logo and pattern that you can use this function for. This is what I was able to create like one day after I started using Dimension, and this was so easy to create. So I first painted some patterns using Photoshop brush, and now you can do with Fresco because it will actually give you some more simulation. And I'm really excited for that. Anyway, I created some patterns, and I had this sync to CC libraries, and I just placed these layers on top of my capsule. So you can see that I just placed like 3 layers, and then I'm just scale it and rotate it. I can just manipulate any way I want, and I can do it independently per layer because it is individual layers. But there's a little bit more exciting thing about being able to place multiple layers and control it individually. You can actually assign different effects to each layer, and it will give you the capability of doing something like this, a foil stamped logo. And I know in order for you to actually do this in print shop, you have to pay a lot of money, or you can't really do this in Photoshop. So here I have 2 floating canisters, and I actually want the number part to be foil stamped. So I have it as a separate layer, as you can see on the right side in scene panel. And now I am just sliding over metallic in the properties. And you can see that it is starting to look different from the rest of the material. So now you learned how to place multiple graphic layers and the benefit of having multiple layers. You can transform it individually. You can also assign different effects to each layer. But here's the thing. Here I have a coffee bag, and I have multiple layers. And I can cover my entire coffee bag with all of these layers, but that doesn't mean that the coffee bag is made out of these layers. It is actually made out of the paper, and that's what we call as base material. Graphic layer is something that you put on top of the model, whereas base material defines what your object is made out of. In this case, it was brown paper. So where can you get base material? You have the starter assets shipped with our app, and of course, you will have a lot of stock assets too. And you can see that when you're scrolling the starter asset, we support two different types of material. One is Adobe standard material. The other one is substance material. And you see that they have this special setting icon. And I'm going to talk to you the difference of these two materials. But first, I want to talk about Adobe standard material, because not only because it's powerful in its own way, but also this will be the default material. So here I have 3 computers, and they look exactly the same for the color. It's all green. But it is actually a little bit different when you look at closely. You can see that middle computer, it has the reflection of the glowing monitor. It's because the surface is very glossy. It's not rough like the top monitor or top computer. What about the bottom computer? You can see that the case is almost looking like it's made out of metal. It's because material is defined with not just color, which in this case was green, but also defined with all of these different properties. And you can kind of imagine what each thing does by its name, right? Roughness is something that you would use to control how rough or glossy your surface is. Metallic is something that you would use for metal. You can also use translucency for mark something up like glass. Normal might be a little bit foreign to you. It's something that would define the bumpiness of your surface. So back to these computers, now you can kind of see how I marked it up. The middle computer, the case looks really glossy because I had roughness at 0%. Whereas the bottom computer, I had metallic at 100%, so that's why it looks like it's made out of metal. And just keep in mind that these properties can not only be defined by numbers with slider, but also can be defined by black and white images. And in this case, they will be used to mask some of these effects, just like how channel mask works in Photoshop. So let me show you how I created this computer from scratch. I have the computer placed in my scene, and I'm going to go to select the material. Now I am material selection, and you can see that I just opened the base color because I wanted it to be green. So I am going to just slide this color picker and then make it green. Okay, great. And then I'm going to control roughness so that it becomes really rough or glossy. Or I'm also controlling metallic, so it's looking really metallic or not metallic at all. But here's the thing. Now my entire computer is green, and that doesn't look really good. I think monitor should be at least white, and it should probably emit some light because that's what monitors do. In other words, I want 2 different material assigned to one model. We also call this material region. I want 2 different material regions for one model. And can I simply do this by clicking on Magic Wand tool? And I know that in Photoshop, Magic Wand tool selects pixels of similar color. But in this case, it will select some parts of the model that actually makes sense as a chunk. So here I have Magic Wand right under Select Tool, and I'm going to just click on this, and you can see that it has some tool options. I can also set tolerance. I'm going to click on this monitor screen, and you can see that it's analyzing my geometry and then select that part. I can simply drag and drop glowing material to there. And I also want to bring some characteristic to this computer, so I'm going to just place my graphic layer by dragging and dropping. And you can see that my computer now has some cute face. I can kind of scale it and then place it again. Okay, so now I know how to mock this up, but maybe you might want to start creating your own material from the beginning. And you probably want to have some more sophisticated material. And that's why we ship with these presets, or you have access to all the stock material too. So you can see that the way you apply these presets, you can simply drag and drop. And you can see that the property panel is not changing what type of properties it has, because Adobe Standard Material will always use consistent sets of property. And these properties can be masked, again, with black and white images like it is doing here. And I can simply just change to something like metal, and you can see that the properties didn't change, but it just has different image input. And if you kind of find it a little bit more confusing to understand, all you have to remember is this. Because the input is made out of images, it actually means that you can also customize this material by swiping out with your own graphic, or you can also modify the image input with Photoshop. So this might be a little bit more like wordy and, oh, I don't know what does actually mean. It's not that confusing, so let me actually show it to you. Okay, so I have a computer that I have the preset material applied to. And this is Adobe Standard Material, so it will have the base color and other properties. And I actually don't like this burgundy color because it doesn't go well with my green background, and I actually want to customize it. So I can do that by opening up this base color swatch, and then you can see that it has image input, and there's edit button. So I can click on this edit button, and you can see that it will actually open up Photoshop. And with Photoshop, you probably all know how to make it green because you are the experts at that, and you can throw some hue and saturation layers and stuff. So when I save it back, you can see that now my computer is looking green. It was that easy. And in fact, I was actually able to create all of these 5 variations of cloth from just one simple Adobe Standard Material. That's the power of it. But we also support Substance Material, which is .svs AR. And how is it different from Adobe Standard Material? So Substance Material has its own unique properties, and it actually lets you customize the material with controls specific to each material. And these controls can be very fun and very powerful. So let me show it to you a little bit later. So here I have leather under Substance Material. It's both leather, but you can see that inside properties, it is having different controls. That's what's different from Substance Material to Adobe Standard Material. So what type of exciting controls do they have? Here I have an alphabet model, which again is also free from stock, so go get it. And I'm going to just scroll down to apply this Substance Material. And you can see that it has some stitch and leather. I'm going to scale by using repeat so that you can actually see the part better. And I'm going to just change the color of the leather by clicking on this swatch and applying some green. And I'm also going to play with some stitch so that it becomes double to single. And also I'm going to rotate the stitch direction, or I can also make it really thick or long. It is all possible because this Substance Material actually came with these controls. And in fact, I was able to create all of these patterns not because I designed it, but it actually came with the controls for each Substance Material. And if you're curious about how to actually make this, I also have blog post posted for 36 days of type so that you can actually participate in 3D. And it will have all the step-by-step tutorials for all of these. And if you're curious, these are all the free assets you can get. Anyway, back to the Substance Material. So where can you get more? There will always be the question. And this is the 2 websites that you can get. The source.substance3d.com is running on subscription-based, whereas share.substance3d.com is community-based, meaning that, again, this will be free. So go get it and get the power of Substance Material. I know we talked so much about material, so I'm going to just recap it quickly. So first, you can place graphic layers, which can also get edited back to Photoshop or Illustrator, and you can actually place it not only as a decal, but also as a fill mode, so that you can actually have it all go around your object. You can also define what your object is made out of using base material. And we have Adobe standard material, which will always have consistent sets of property with image input that you can edit them back in Photoshop. Or you can also use substance material. Okay, now I know how to place model and arrange them. I also know how to define the look of it using material. Now it's time to talk about how to actually place my model into the context. And this is quite easy and fascinating part too. Well, you already have taste of good photography because you're all designers, and all you have to do is just apply it as a background. So this is something that this amazing designer did. And in order to photoshoot this, it's going to take you a lot of time. You have to make this yummy looking sandwich. You also have to hire a photographer, and also you have to set up your studio, and you also have to print out the label. It's going to take you some hours or weeks. But the power here is that this was actually rendered in Dimension. And the only thing that's 3D here is the scan, and everything else was photography. And in fact, this designer shows how powerful this function can be. In order for you to make all of these variations in Photoshop, that's going to take you weeks. But in Dimension, you can do it like in a very quick way because all you have to do is just swipe out background images. So how can you do that? Here I have a 3D model, and I want to place it on this photography background. So I have this model placed on my scene, and I'm going to just drag and drop this photography, and you can see that it is placed as a background. But right now it's kind of looking wrong because the camera that I'm using to look at my scene or my car is different from the camera that was used to shoot this photography. And I can quickly fix that because it has some horizon line and perspective. And with our machine learning algorithm, we actually detect those. So you can see that we have this action button called Match Image, and I can actually opt in and out of some options. And I'm going to ask it to match my camera perspective. And here I click OK. And not only my camera is now looking right, but also we generated the light from this image so that my car actually looks like it's sitting on this road. But of course, we are all creatives. Some people really take this function as far as this. The first example of the olive can shows you how efficient 3D can be compared to photoshoot. But something like this actually shows you how what's not possible in reality can come to life with 3D app. Or something like this. I mean, the model that is used here is very basic shape, but combined with right photography, it actually looks stunning. Now we covered the very basic flow of 3D, and it's time to talk about a little bit more advanced function to become the 3D designer. And the thing that I want to talk about is camera, and this is a must-know function, because this is what you use to look at your scene from one angle to another. And while this sounds a little bit more intimidating, it's kind of not, so don't get scared. So you can manipulate your camera with camera tool, and the shortcut is really easy. It's just 1, 2, 3, as easy as 1, 2, 3. And you can see that we have some control bar that has very, very important functions. And also you can select camera in the scene panel, and you can control the properties of camera with precision in this input. Okay, so let me first show you the tool first. Here I have Orbit tool selected on the toolbar, which is the first one, shortcut 1. You can see that I am orbiting around my scene, looking at it from this different angle. I can also choose Pen tool, which is 2, and I am now looking at my scene from sideways, like this. I can also switch to Dolly tool, which is 3, to zoom in and out, like this. So that's how you look at your scene from different angle. But here's the thing. Let's say that I actually want to edit this material of this red ball that I selected. Right now it's a little bit too far, and I actually want to take a closer look at it when I'm changing its color. And in order to do that, maybe I have to switch between different tools. I first have to zoom in, and then I have to pan it a little bit. That's a lot of steps involved. And there's a very easy way of doing this automatically. So first, you have to have your object of interest selected. And all you have to do is just hit F key, or you can also go into Control Center. So I have the object selected now here, and you can see that I am just clicking on this action button, frame selection, and you can see that my camera is moved so that the object of interest is at the center of my view. And now I can just easily edit the material while I am looking at it. But after I'm done with my edit, this is not giving me much view, right? All I can see is very big blue or green sphere, and I actually want to go back to the view that I had. And you can easily do that by clicking on this camera undo, which was right next to fit frame selection. So you can see that I can go back and forth for the camera movement without canceling the edit that I made for material. And since you are going to move your camera around a lot while you're editing your scene, you will probably wonder if there's a way of saving the camera position. And you can do that, again, at the Control Center by clicking on this bookmark. So you can easily open this up and then hit Add button, and I'm going to name it as Home. And that way, when I'm lost with my scene like this, I can always go back to the camera bookmark and just click on it. But this is not the only thing that's useful about camera bookmark. It can actually help you render these 2D graphics from different angles like this. Because, for example, I had this crazy bumpy surface that I had on my sphere, and I probably want to show that off when I render it out. So you can do that by saving camera bookmarks. So I'm going to adjust my camera so that I actually have this bumpy surface sphere at the center. I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and then I'm going to save that as my camera bookmark. Now I am going to camera bookmark, which is at the Control Center, and I'm hitting plus button, and I'm going to name it as Detail. So in this case, when I'm ready and go to Render tab, you can see that my camera bookmark is saved on the render. So you can render all of those different views. So now that you know the basic function of the camera, let's talk about how you can actually design with it. And here's an amazing photo shoot of some package design, and you can see that I want to talk about the left photography. And while there is so many things that's going on, you kind of know what the hero of this photography is. You can see that I have this label that's on focus and everything else is blurred. That's how I know the hero. And you can actually do that with our camera tool by using focus and blur to create not only depth in your scene, but also indicate what you have to pay focus to. So it's not that difficult. Here you can see that I have camera selected on my scene, and I'm going to turn on focus in properties. And as soon as I do that, you can see that there's this focus icon placed on the nearest object. And I can also, I'm going to place it a little bit differently, and then I'm going to also increase the blur amount. And you can see that I am previewing my effect. You can turn off the preview by going to Control Center again, but I'm going to turn it on so that you can actually see what I'm doing. And while you turn off the preview, it doesn't mean that effect will go away. It's just making your screen crisp, but when you're rendering it, the effect will still be there. You can also reset your focus point by going to this action button. And you can also touch on any surface of the object, and it will automatically refocus to that object that you just touched. So I'm going to do this a couple of times so you can actually see what's happening. Oh, sorry, my video actually screwed up. Sorry about that. Let's Fast forwarding. Yes, okay. So I'm going to reset it so that now the focus is at the back of my sculpture, or now the focus is on the right side. But this is not the only thing that you can do with camera. You can actually create some isometric art by using field of view. And if you don't know what isometric art is, this is some examples. It's a particular view of 3D that doesn't have any vanishing points or perspective. So you can do this by controlling field of view. So you can see that I don't have anything placed in my scene so that you can pay focus on this grid. And as I am moving the field of view really lower, my grid is looking really parallel. But as I increase it, you can see that I am having vanishing point and my perspective is really distorted. So when I rendered this out, you can see that when I had my camera perspective field of view at high, at like 60 something, my perspective is having some vanishing points, and that's why the blue line is not looking parallel. But when I actually lowered it, you can see that my blue line is now becoming parallel, which will give me this isometric effect. Okay, so we talked about most of the design elements except one thing. Do you remember what the last thing is? Oh my God, you got it right. Dang, I thought no one would remember it, so I was going to give you some hint images, but you got it, so okay. Well, here are some photography hints that I was going to show you. You can see that this one doesn't have any crazy material or whatever, but the left photography is so effective. Why? Because the lighting was casted right, and also the shadow was in such a dramatic perspective and direction to show off these spiky legs. Or what about this one? I mean, the scene is really set up simple, right? It has this orange wall, it has this little vase, but it's the shadow that is casted by the light that is really adding some drama. So yes, the answer was right, lighting. So everything I'm going to talk about lighting is considered pro tips because we actually have, by default, an environment light. I always mess up pronunciation environment, so please forgive me on that. So you are going to have a hard time messing up with light, but there's only one thing that you can actually mess up, which is turning off the light like this. And you would lose visibility to your object and your scene wouldn't be editable. But you can simply turn it back on, or if you happen to throw it away, just go back to the starter asset and just take it back on. Then that's the only thing you really need to know about lighting. But for those who actually want to use light as your design element, I'm going to talk to you in details. So we have two different types of light that we support. One is environment light, which by default we will have. But also, you can add as many directional light as you want. So environment light will be always one per environment, one per scene. But directional light, you can add as many as you want from the starter asset. So what it is, well, environment light is image-based light. And this image is panoramic image that is spherically surrounding your scene, meaning that it is going to cast light from everywhere. And it will have some high detailed reflection coming from this image detail. And because it is coming from everywhere, it is great for brightening up your entire scene. Whereas directional light is only coming from one direction, it will cast long directional shadow. And of course, you can add as many as you want, like I said. So what does it actually look like? I have a sphere, and I set up the material so that you can actually see the reflection of it. And I have the directional light turned off, so this is only environment light. So just don't get fooled because I have some reflections going on because I don't have anything else on the scene. But when I rotate the light, you can see that the reflection is changing, and you can see that reflection matches with this image. So when I change the light, you can see that the color has changed, reflection has changed. I can also brighten it up or make it dark. Whereas directional light, you can already see that there is this long directional shadow because this light is only come from one direction, not like environment light. And I have more exciting properties here. So if I rotate it, you can see the shadow direction is changing for this light. You can also control the height. You can make it big or small. You can also control the softness of the edge. You can also change the shape of it. So you have way more control for directional light. Okay, so now that you know what type of light we have, how can you actually use this as your design element? First, light casts shadow, as you see for our previous examples. And you can actually use shadow as part of your design. So here I have a scene set up exactly the same way, except one variation, which is light. And I actually like the middle one the most because it kind of implies that I have to only pay focus on this front business card because it has all the light casted onto the surface. But the rest of the variation, which is flying, it is actually in the shade, and it kind of tells you the story. The right one, it is having some interesting shape of shadow, but I don't know about this one. I think it has a lot of elements going on, but it's your preference. So how did I set this up? First, I set up the business card variation by having one Illustrator file with 5 artboard. That way, I don't have to manage all these different variations of files. And then I had it synced to my CC libraries. So when you actually select the material layer and change the artboard, you can see that I can quickly explore different variations. Now the important part, how can I see light, or how can I control light? I strongly recommend that you actually turn on render preview. And while I'm going to talk about render preview shortly, all you have to know right now is that it will give you accurate representation of what your final 2D graphic will look like. So when I turn this on, you can see that my scene is turning really realistic. And I'm going to I just turned off the directional light, you can see. And you can see that my environment light is evenly distributing the light. It really doesn't have strong contrast between the bright part or the dark part. But when I turn directional light back on and then turn off environment light, you can see that I have such a strong contrast going on with directional light. It's because I set up the wall so that it actually blocks directional light. Because directional light, again, is coming from one direction, so I can block the light with some walls. So how I set up the wall, I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to turn up the render preview, and you can see that I have these walls. And this type of having some walls to block the light is very common in 3D. So this way, oh, sorry about that. My PowerPoint is not helping me. Okay. So in this way, when I actually rotate directional light, you can see that my shadow is moving, and that way I can actually control what part of my scene is having some shadow. And you can see that when I turn on render preview back on, now the shadow is casted from this column because my light has changed its direction. Now I have some interesting shadow going on. But that's not the only thing that you can do with light. So here you can see that the designer's intention was to bring out this smooth silhouette of the bottle. And you can totally do this with light because light reveals shape, and you can actually use highlight to bring out the object's shape or material. So this is something that I rendered in Dimension, which I'm going to show you. So here I'm going to set up my environment background so that it becomes dark, so that I actually have the white object really popping out with big contrast between the background. I'm also going to turn on render preview like this, and I'm going to turn off environment light because I want to use just the directional light. You can see that I actually added one directional light, and it is coming from this right side, or yes, right side. I'm going to place one more light like this, and then you can see that it is placed in the same exact direction. And I actually don't want that because now it's only the tail of my stripe that is getting really bright. And I want some light casted on this front part of my stripe. So I can actually change where the light is getting casted on by clicking on this action button. And I can also click on the surface of the object so that it actually brings highlight right under my cursor. And you can see that the light is getting adjusted to follow my mouse cursor. And I can release it, and it will place the light there. But it's a little bit lacking drama, and I actually want the thin edge that is flowing like this to have big highlight. So I'm going to add one more light, like this. And then I'm going to go to the action button again to place light on the edge, like this. And I can increase the intensity so that it really becomes white and it stands out. So that's how you control the light. Okay, we go through all the elements that you can use for 3D, and now it's time to talk about sharing. And you can share in both 2D rendered image and 3D scene. So first, you have to understand a concept of rendering. And I kind of talked about it in the lighting section. If you don't know what rendering is, it's a process of deciding which pixel to show on the screen. And when you're interacting with your scene, it actually gives you very quick real-time rendering. And we actually call it real-time renderer. But when you're finally outputting your image, we want to represent your scene more accurately. And we use something called ray tracing rendering. And you can kind of preview what your rendered image looks like by turning on render preview, like I did for lighting. You can see that my scene is becoming more realistic. But even in this mode with render preview on, when you start interacting with your scene, you can see that I am now manipulating my camera to look at it from different angle. And you can see that we turn to this fast rendering again. And as soon as I am done with interaction, it will just go back to this realistic rendering while I'm in render preview. So just make sure that you like your design before you render out. And you can see that in the render tab, it will have all of the camera bookmarks that you saved. We also have cloud rendering, and we will give you certain credits per month. I actually forgot how many credits, but you can ask any of our staff for that. And it will always refill a monthly basis. Also, if you have NVIDIA RTX GPU card, we now support GPU rendering, so go check that out. Otherwise, you will always use CPU rendering for now. And you can see that we have two different options of file format, PSD and PNG. And I kind of recommend that you always do it in PSD. It's because, as you can see, it has some more additional layer. And these layers actually help you make some selections. So let's say that I actually want to just select the laptop or just the DN logo. I can easily just go to Magic Wand tool and select the different color part, which is in material selection or object selection mask. But your scene is in 3D, and flat images aren't as cool as 3D. So let's say that I have this amazing artist friend called Vlad, and he's actually the one who set up the Terminator section. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But anyway, he rendered this in Dimension using some background image, and it was looking so awesome. And I wanted to take a look at this spaceship from all different angles, so I asked Vlad. So Vlad had the scene set up like this, and all he had to do is just go to the share button. And you can see that we have some options to publish as 3D scene, or you can also export to Arrow. So he's going to just publish as 3D scene now. And then what this one is doing is that it will upload your file and then convert it to GLTF, which is another file format. And also, it will actually host it on the web viewer, and it will give me the link. So now it is uploading and preparing. And let's say that I got the link. OK, I got the link. So I'm going to open it up in the web browser, and you can see that it has all the different camera bookmarks that came from his scene, or I can also explore this 3D spaceship on my own interaction. But this is not the only thing that he did. He actually had a chance to come to our Times Square office and look at this amazing view, and he actually wanted to have the spaceship floating around this Times Square building. So he used Adobe Aero to place his spaceship in Times Square so that it actually looks like it is flying on Times Square. This is something that you'll never be able to do in 2D. Okay, so I'm done with my session with this part. I know I talked so much today. I'm really thankful that you stayed all the way through. If you forgot everything, that's totally fine too. You can always go to the start screen and just go to the learn, and you will have our in-app tutorial following you. And I want to end my session with this quote. Artist man's constant effort to create himself a different order of reality from that which is given to you. Well, we have an ultimate limit when we are giving physical forms to our imagination, which is reality. And what we design always has been based on what was possible in reality. But the world that we really want is based on our imagination. And that's what essentially motivated me to jump into 3D, to free my creativity so that it's no longer bound to reality. And I really hope that Adobe Dimension gives you that freedom to you too. Okay, thank you so much. Any questions? Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you actually create different actual shapes of light? So you have sort of round and square, but you actually make
Yeah, we don't support it yet. It is called cooking, but we are looking into that. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, okay. So you can actually set it up by document setting. So I can actually show it to you. Oh, also feel free to pick up my business card that's up here before you leave, or postcards here. I'll just place it here. Anyway. Okay, so let me share the screen. Okay, so here you can see that when you click on this artwork boundary, you can also set up the resolution and canvas size. And if it's your graphic that is looking pixelated, we actually address that issue for 3.0. And also, your texture or graphic can be set up as big as maybe your canvas, or 2,000 by 2,000 or 1,000 by 1,000, and that will actually give you a better result. Yes? Yes, I'm going to set up a new scene for that. Okay, so I'm going to place this sphere here, and then I'm going to add the light, directional light, here at the starter asset. And I'm going to have this directional light. Right now I have both of the light, so that's why it's looking super bright. So I'm going to just simply click on here. You can see that with directional light, there's this action button. And with this action button, you can actually click on any surface of the object, and it will automatically move your light so that it casts light under my cursor, like this. And depending on your material, you will see that this is not really giving me like a huge contrast because it has very smooth surface. You can also turn on render preview so that you can actually see the real effect. And right now, it is also having the background reflected and bouncing the light back, and that's why it is looking light here. But that's why you always have to turn on render preview. Did that answer your question? Yes.
How do we add them?
Edit or add?
Yeah, so like I don't have it directional like in my starter asset.
Oh,
Add a folder that has them in it.
no. So with 3.0, we actually ship with it. So you should just update your software.
I have a question. If you have a box but you don't have a model, can you use a die line?
So we have a prototype that is being developed. So we have a project that was showcased a couple of years ago at Mass, which was called Fantastic Fold. And it basically is something like you give the die line, and you will actually give control over how to fold it. So we have that in development.
Or would that be a different program than Dimension, or do you work them together?
So you should be able to use them together. Right now we have it just on the web browser because we are still trying to make the machine learning work faster with a lot of sample. But once it's ready, it will be part of the product. And it should be work with Dimension. Yes? Sure. Do you remember which one it was? Oh, this one. Okay. Okay. Oh. Oh, no. Sorry. This one. Hi.
How much can you edit the native assets?
We don't have any specific controls over it. It will be always the 3-axis based. But we also showcased something called Shapeshift a couple of years ago, which actually understands the semantic of the object. So for example, when I'm actually increasing this, it might not increase the bottle cap because that's what you shouldn't be increasing. Or if I added like some of the edge, then it would actually reflect it symmetrically because it has 2 symmetrical elements.
So if I wanted to round the edge on the business card,
Oh, yeah. So we actually have something coming up this year, very soon.
or if I wanted to use a lathe in Illustrator.
Yes, that is being discussed too. Yeah. I would love to have that this year, but we couldn't ship it yet. So, any other questions? Yes.
You have multiple series of similar objects, but you use them in relation to the camera. Do they automatically scale based on where they are in space, or do you need to scale them down? So for instance, if I have 2 bottles, and I want to move one further away from the camera, will it automatically scale down, or do I have to scale it down myself?
So because it's 3D space, the further your object is, the smaller it will look. But the real size of that object, when you actually bring them back to closer to your camera, it will stay the same. Yes?
So for example, I have a new program, but are you able to make the model in?
Yeah, so that's our biggest request, being able to model. But we don't have a modeling solution yet. I think it's also because of how broad the modeling can be. Like it can be hard surface modeling, it can be vector extrusion, and we are highly interested in supporting at least vector extrusion or being able to create something from die line because that's the target that we are using. But also within Adobe, we are very interested in providing our own modeling solution. But we haven't decided where it will live yet.
So you don't have it yet, but like, if you bring like a SketchUp file.
Yes, we support SketchUp file.
For example, the sandwich and the canned tomato.
Yes.
If you want to do that, would you bring in like the photography as background,
Mhm.
and then also the model in it, and then put the packaging on it? Like,
Yes, yes. Any other question? Yes?
I'm also trying to take an AutoCAD drawing
Mm-hmm.
and do something. So how do I go from AutoCAD to a model?
Yes, we are looking into supporting AutoCAD file, like CAD formats this year. Right now, there should be a conversion from vector or CAD file to polygonize it. So you have to use like a file converter service somewhere. But we are looking into it so that we can actually support it more robustly. Any other questions? No, okay, thank you so much. I hope you find this helpful. Thank you.